And hello and welcome. This is in response to a student that asked me, how do I create an enemy that when I look at them, they stop moving, and when I'm not looking at them, they can move, or they would move towards me or move around freely. So I've gone ahead and I've created that character. The closest thing that I have as far as an example of where that would have been in a game would have been Super Mario Brothers with a Boo Buddy. So if we push play real quick, we can see here that the Boo Buddies, when you're not facing them, come towards you, and when you are facing them, stop. So let's go ahead and show you what I had to do to create this character. And let's knock that out. Okay, so basically I have my first person character here, and I've set up an enemy character of a chair. Now I chose a chair because I could tell the front and the back of it, and I could tell when it was pawn sensing me and when it wasn't. From there, the other thing that you need to do is you're going to need to set up a couple of unique collision settings, so then that way these two boxes and that sphere and that box don't interact with anything else in the world other than themselves. And let me pull that down so we can actually see this. Okay, so what you have to do is go into collisions. I set up two additional object channels, one called enemy vision, so like the vision for the enemy, and then another one that's called it should be a first person character. I kind of messed that up. My dyslexia kind of got away from me there. But it's first person character new sight. Now on both of those I also created a preset value for them. And just so that you can see the preset values, if I open up this one, which is, again, I just named it the same thing, enemy vision. I left the collision settings enabled. I've left it as the type, as the one that we showed you up there, and I've given a description of stop enemy movement. I have it ignoring everything in the world except for the first person character new sight. And then on the other one, the first person new sight, it says that it's a first person's new sight, it's collision with everything, or it's a collision enabled. I've given it the object channel, the one that was up there, and then I have it ignoring everything except for enemy vision. So essentially what's happening is that these two guys see each other but ignore everything else in the world. So with that done, we can now start working on the so with the first person character, there's not really anything other than setting up, so I'll show you what we need to do with him. So the only thing that I did, and actually I don't even need that, so the only thing that I've done here is I've gone into the viewport. I have created a new collision, so I went into add component, collision, so I can scroll down until we get to collisions, added a box collision, and the only thing unique about this box collision is that it's in front of the character. Instead of being centered around the character, it's actually going to be in front of the character. Now you can make this for whatever range you want. I left it at this size based on my world and the open area-ness that I had. This box was going to be good enough to be able to walk around and get stuff to stop directly in front of me. Other than that, if we go in here, there's nothing unique about it. All it is a collision box. With the collision box, the collision box is set to, it does generate overlap events, so then that way we do indeed are able to trigger events from this. We don't want the character or anybody else to be able to step on this. We've given it the unique collision presets, first person new sight, which you just saw that I did and created up there, and we can see that it is going to only interact or overlap with enemy vision. That's it. That's all we did for the first person character. So let me just hit compile because I got rid of that other piece of code. Now the big thing that we have to do is in the chair buddy. Now I'm calling it a chair buddy because I didn't have a ghost. And essentially, I'm using buddy from Boo Buddy, and then chair because that's the mesh that I gave it. Now what I did here was I created a, and I actually don't need the capsule for right now. I created a sphere collision, so go to add, scroll down until you see sphere collision. The only thing I've done with the collision itself is that I've made the radius 500, so it is quite large around the chair. So then that way, my character actually has to get close enough to the chair to get it to stop. From there, we would have the collision settings. We do want it to generate an overlap. We don't need the character or anybody to be able to step on this. Not that it matters because it's ignoring everything anyways. We have labeled this as a collision preset as the enemy vision, which gives it the automatic object type of enemy vision. We are ignoring everything except for the first person character's new sight. So the only thing this capsule will do is interact with first person new sight. Now from there, the other thing I've also done is I've created a pawn sensing. This pawn sensing's radius is actually going to be bigger than the box or the collision settings because it needs to be able to trigger this code before this happens. So then that way it will actually move towards us. And I can already imagine a couple of you guys going, but wait, doesn't that mean as soon as our character's vision goes here, the chair would stop? I've actually got something for you on that because that was actually something that took me quite some time to figure out as far as being able to make it to where this chair can actually come all the way up to us if we're not looking at it and damage us, I guess, if we wanted it to. I don't have damage code on this as it is, but the pawn sensing does need to be quite a bit larger than the rest of the sphere, so then that way it will actually trigger that code prior to it running into the collision settings, which would then stop the chair from moving. For reference, I have this at 500 radius and the pawn sensing at a radius of 1000, and I've got the vision pretty narrow, so it only sees in the front of us, it doesn't see behind us. So I've got that, let's say, roughly at around 30. Now, with that being said, the code that you're going to have to do is quite large. If we take a step back and look at what we need to do, there's actually several pieces of this. All of this is necessary to get all those different types of movements to work. So the very first thing that I did was I created an event begin play. I created a custom event called chair roam. For those who have done the roam chase shoot character, this is basically the same code, except I've given it a different name. So this is called chair roam. It's going to go to an AI move 2 with a self, so then that way it moves the chair itself. As far as the destination, it's getting a random point from 1,000 units around it, so the same distance as its sight. And then from there it's getting wherever the character's actor location is, which is the chair, because it's going back to self. Now from there I have created a branch, an if statement saying that if for whatever reason the first person new sight is making contact or is overlapping with the sphere, it will give us a true condition, which would then give us the stop chair, which is also another custom event which we'll get to in a little bit. And then on the bottom I have a set timer by function, and I've given it the name function or the function name of chair roam, which is again another custom event which we'll take a look at here in a minute. Where is it? There it is, which is the first one that we set up early. So basically what this does is if we're overlapping, it stops the chair. If not, it sends it back to roam, so it continues going back through the roam. If we're not overlapping, it gives me the chair. If we do overlap, we get the chair stop. So from there, chair stop. Now the only thing with this is that there wasn't a very easy way to put the cast to first person up here because I would have had to attach the object to something. So I attached the object down here to pawn. I guess I could have put it up there. I'm just saving space, I guess. And then from there, I took the as first person character to this, so then that way it knows that this is coming from the first person character and not coming from the chair, especially since the chair doesn't have this. Okay, so from there, the chair to chase. This one is the code that we need for actually getting us to move towards the first person character. So when it does trigger the pawn sensing, it'll trigger this code, which is chair to chase, which is actually down here. No, I'm sorry. Where do we put this? Oh yeah, there it is. So on pawn sensing, chair to chase. I should probably put that closer, so that way we know that it's part of this. Make that a little bit smaller. Make that box a little bit smaller. Okay, we'll just drag you out and make you smaller. And then that way it doesn't cover up any other code. Alright, so chair to chase is coming from an on pawn sensing. So remember, you hit on pawn sensing, right click, and then you can do underneath add function, the event dispatchers, add pawn C. From there, that's going to go to the custom event. So I have to create the custom event first. That's why I have this down here. So the chair to chase is going to cast to the first person player. Now, here's the fun part. I have the same code that I had up there, so it is going to check to see if we're overlapping. If we're overlapping, it's going to actually give us the false. If we are overlapping, it's going to give us the true statement, which is going to tell us to stop the chair. So very similar to what we did up here. So you can see that this and this is actually a copy of basically these pieces up here, this and this. Now, what is unique is that if we are going into the chair to chase, I actually did a set sphere radius, which is this, and I've reduced it down to a size of 20. So if you do that, what ends up happening is that it ends up looking like this. So it gets really small and very close to the chair. Now, basically what that does is, if we look at that with pawn sensing's way out there. So this thing can get as close as it wants to us, even touch us, without us triggering the sphere and the code that is attached to the sphere. So let me put the sphere back to 500 because we need that as the starting point. Okay. And let's go back to the code. So with the set radius sphere, and see it's going to sphere, so it'll actually make it to 20. We have the update overlaps checking all the time to make sure that that is true. And if it is true, then it'll go to the branch. Now what the branch is saying is, if we are, and the branch's condition is coming from down here as already stated, as above. It's the same piece of code. If the sphere and the first person's news site are overlapping, the chair stops. If they're not, the chair goes to an AI move, a move to, which is us, AI move to destination, and it's targeting back the actor. That's actually why it's going back to the first person player. So the first person player is its destination. It's the pawn that's going to move, and on success, so it's going to wait until it's finished doing this before it resets the variable of the sphere back to 500. So basically what's going to happen is the chair is going to come to us with, once it pawn senses us, the sphere is going to shrink down to 20. That is going to allow the chair to move towards us without triggering the chair stop. And then when it gets to us, it's going to resize itself back to 500, and then that's it. And essentially at that point it'll stop, because once this is back to 500, this is then going to re-trigger the chair, it's going to re-trigger the overlap event, which I haven't shown you yet, which is this, which actually stops the chair from moving. And I've actually got this in two places, so in case for whatever reason it doesn't do it here, or this isn't fast enough because it's still in the AI move 2, it'll actually do it down here as soon as it goes into the overlap. So whatever comes first. If the chair bumps into us, it automatically goes up to 500 and stops because it triggers this. And if it doesn't, if we turn around before the chair gets to us, it also stops because the radius goes back up to 500 and then triggers the chair to stop. So from there, the other piece of code that I have is the event tick, which is a bind event to actor begin overlap. So this is similar to what we did with the bind event to on pawn C, except for this time, instead of it being a pawn C, it's an actor overlap. The actor is going to be itself, it's going to be the overlap event. And then from there, what we have is a chair stop, which is a custom event. Remember, we did that by dragging out from event. And then I've got two pieces of code here that says for the floating pawn movement, stop the movement immediately, and then stop the active movement. And that's just double checking to make sure that all movement stops on the dime and stops any active movement, which means that if it is in the process of moving, it'll stop in both situations. Now from there, the last piece of this is the sphere. So if I hold the sphere and do a on begin overlap, basically what I'm telling it to do here is to increase the radius size of this back to 500. And now the other thing that I've also done is I've used a timer. So this up here, remember, this is sending us back to chair. It's giving us a time of 2, and I've got it on looping, so then that way it continues to keep doing it. Now the reason why I've done it this way as opposed to putting a delay is because the delay would have waited for the thing to run out, the time to run out, before it told the code, whatever the next piece of code would have been. With this, with a timer, I can actually clear the timer. And if it's got the same name as the function, then it knows what timer actually needs to be stopped, right? So it actually clears the timer and makes sure that that it doesn't re-trigger after the delay event. So here we've got it clearing the timers by function name, and then we want the chair to stop. So basically what we're saying here is on begin overlap with the sphere, change the radius back up to 500 so we don't have to wait for the chair to actually get to us before this happens. Then we're going to clear any timers. So then that way the only thing that happens is the chair stopping. Now the other thing too is that if you walk far enough away from the chair, we want the chair to go back into roam. So what I did was, again with the sphere, there is you right click, go into event, and there is one called on event end overlap. So as soon as us and the sphere are no longer, or this sphere is no longer being overlapped, then the chair goes back into roam. So a recap basically is when the game starts, the chair goes into roam. Roam is basically it moving around on a random point 1,000 points away from itself. If it is overlapping the first person's collision box, that's called first person new site. If it is colliding, it stops. If it's not colliding, the timer waits two seconds and then goes back and re-gives us this event. If from there is the chase. So if the pawn senses us, it sends us to chase. The chase is centered around it's cast to the first person player. The radius gets reset on the sphere to 20, so then that way the chair will make it all the way to us if we happen not to be looking at it. And then if again, this would be the branch condition saying, hey, if the sphere and the site are overlapping, or the collision is overlapping, then give us a the chair stop. If not, continue moving towards the sphere, and on success, pop the bubble back up to 500. And what that does is it makes sure that it doesn't just keep ramming into us, right? It's basically saying, hey, it was 20, now it's 500. So the second we notice damage or we turn around, it's already back up, and we can make sure that we trigger the overlap sphere code, which basically makes sure that and this is the overlap code, which says, hey, if the sphere is being overlapped, then we want first the radius to go all the way up, then the timer to be stopped, then the chair to, or any timers to be cleared, and then the chair to stop. And then once we stop overlapping, once we've moved away from the chair, we go back into chair roam. And the only thing that I have on the tick is that it's constantly checking to see if it's being overlapped, and if it is being overlapped, it just triggers this custom event, which is a chair stop, and that makes sure that everything stops. Okay, fun. This was probably 2 days of my life trying to figure out how to get all these nitpicky little things to actually work. So let me go ahead and hit compile, and I'll show you the demo on how this works in application. Oops, because I got them next to each other and not separated from each other. Okay, so let's test this. So we're going to push play. I'm going to make this big, so we can see more of the screen. Okay, so we do indeed see that the chair is roaming. It's doing its own thing. It stops for 2 seconds and then roams again. Now if I walk up to the chair stops. It's not moving anymore because it's inside my collision box, and the two collision boxes are triggering each other and not allowing the box or the chair to move. Now I'm going to walk away from the chair, and as soon as the chair and me are not in contact, or the collision boxes are no longer in contact, the chair goes back into roam. Now if I walk up next to the chair and let's say go here, the chair should be seeing me, and you'll notice that it moved towards me. I'm going to turn away, and I should allow it to be able to, and you'll see that it actually came closer to me. So let me do that one more time. I'm going to move away, still in the vision of the chair. The chair moved closer, and the chair is now right next to me. So the chair does see me, but notice that right now if I'm looking at the chair, even though I am inside of its vision and inside of its sight cone, the pawn sensing cone, it's not moving towards me. And that is because right now when the collision is happening, the box it is seeing this code as opposed to the other code as stated earlier. So if I again move away from the chair, even after having stopped it, it should go back into a roam. There it goes. So it's roaming. I walk up to the chair, chair stops. I walk in front of the chair, chair does not move toward me even though I'm in its vision cone. And as soon as I turn away from the chair and come back, chair has moved towards me. So that is very creepy. That would be great in a horror game. Now you could probably change the speed of the chair so then that way it doesn't move so fast. But again, I turn away, chair has moved towards me, turned away, chair has moved towards me again. I move away from the chair, chair goes back into roaming, chair moved toward me, hit collision box, stopped moving. Alright, so hopefully that was helpful. It was actually kind of fun trying to figure out how to get this to work. I'd never been asked how to make basically a Boo Buddy. And I think this has great applications for all sorts of things in different games, and you can apply this code to obviously whatever you want. So I hope that was helpful, and you guys have a great day.